So, Vatsyayan says that karma is something which can be always dealt with in relationship of dharma and artha. And then he raises the question that am I going to apply this principle of looking and balancing with dharma and artha only for karma? He says no. And he says that it is very essential that whenever you undertake any dharmic task, then you look whether you are fulfilling or whether you are also taking care of karma and of artha. So there has to be a balance between the three. And he says, he gives a general shloka. He says, Trivarga sadhakam yat. Trivarga sadhakam yat syat. Dvayoh ekasya va punaha. Karyam tadapi kurvita natu ekartham dvibadhaka. He says, whatever you have to do when you undertake one thing, dharma or kama or artha, you have to watch that you are not harming the other two. So it has to be a perfect balance. Therefore, when he goes, for instance, I'll give you an example from Kamsutra, then when he goes into this section about seduction of the wives of others, he says that please be aware that you are doing something adharmic. And you make your choice. You will have to suffer the consequences of doing this adharmic. And you be prepared for that. So you make your own decision. Is it that necessary for you to do it? Can you not be without it? Is it necessary at this moment that you should pursue karma and give up the idea of dharma and even earth or blow up your money in seducing the wives of others? So he raises that question again. So constantly throughout the text he is trying to balance the whole thing. So this is briefly the first section of Kamsutra, the first section of Sadharana, in which he lays down these principles. And it is here that he says now that karma is to be treated as a vidya. Karma is to be treated as an art. Now, let me tell you that this distinction between art and science is a modern European distinction. Ancient Indian society or ancient Egyptian or Greek societies, they looked upon various disciplines as disciplines of knowledge. For instance, the Greeks had a word called episteme. Episteme means the system of knowledge, and we had the word vidya. So there were all kinds of vidyas today which are classified now as sciences, and vidyas which are now classified as humanities. So he says that karma is it's a system of knowledge. Call it a science or call it an art, but it is a systematic thing. And it is here that he says that you have to look upon the whole idea of karma as a system of knowledge. Now, the very first question that he takes up is it necessary for women? And if it is necessary for women, then how are women going to learn this whole art? How are women going to take care of this system of knowledge? How will they acquire it? And he says that Prak Yauvanat Stri Prattacha Patyur Abhiprayat. That is, before she is married, before she has attained her youth, that is, she is at her father's home, she should learn about kama. She should learn about sexuality. And after that, when she is wedded, she should further her knowledge, she should go deeper into the science with the cooperation, consent of her husband. Yoshitam Shastra Grahanasya Abhavat Anarthakam. He says if women are not going to learn about Kama Shastra, then it is going to cause them a lot of unhappiness. Prayog Grahanam tu asam. Prayogasya Shastra Purvakatvat iti Vatsyayana. And he says that Vatsyayan makes it clear that the practice of sexuality is to be done with the knowledge of a Shastra. It is not to be done independently without learning anything from anybody. So this is his view, very clear, that Shastra is to be taught to women also. You see this whole debate in Indian society, whether you give this knowledge to this particular class of people, to this gender, to this social section or not, this was a very dominant question. So Vatsyayan, even against the common opinion, makes it very clear that no, you will not prevent women, or rather you will encourage women from learning about Kama Shastra. And he makes it quite explicit in his sutras. So, having established that, then he will go on to solve the problem that how are women going to learn about sexual practices, and is it possible to say that there have been highly accomplished women who know about sexuality, sexual behavior? And he says that yes, it is so. He says the most knowledgeable people among women who know about sexuality are the Ganikas or the courtesans, and also the princesses, also the women of the royal household. They are the ones who knows. Now, Ganika was the highest category of courtesan. Highest category of prostitute was Ganika. So Ganika was somebody highly accomplished in a huge number of arts, and she was very well educated, and Ganikas could speak Sanskrit also, converse in Sanskrit. They were very well educated, and some of them had a training in philosophical systems also. So Ganika is the highest category, and they are the best ones to get your knowledge of sexuality from it. So the Kama Shastra is one text actually which makes it quite clear that education of women in classical India, whatever that period was, I mean, there can be a historical debate from which century to which century, but it is quite clear that women had a very high standard of education. This is not to say that there was universal education, which as it happens today, that a large number of women go to colleges or institutes of higher education. There cannot be a claim like that, but there was a very substantial number of women who had higher education, and how that we will talk about, and he'll give us an example. The best way for a woman to learn about sex, or what we call today by this word sex education, is by uh, what is called a wet nurse, what you call a wet nurse now. And in Sanskrit it is dhai or dhatrika. So somebody who looks after you, and in the rich or well-to-do household, women would have that. So it is these women who would give them a knowledge about sexual behavior. Then he says your mother's sister, Mosi, Matrishva, is Matrishvasa. She is another very good choice. Then there could be some very old member of the household. Maybe she is a widow who lives, or somebody who has served the household for many years. Or there could even be a bhikshuki or a sannyasini who is living, but who in her prime was knowledgeable, who's married or who's well-to-do. So she is somebody who could also give sex education, or talk about sex, or talk about the subtleties of sexual behavior. And of course, the best is an elder sister, or a sister who is a few years ahead in age. So what they prescribe then is not just knowledge of sexuality, but see, it says that there are 64 arts that women should learn. Now it seems to me that in ancient society the system was very well laid out, that men would first learn what they could possibly learn from their parents. That is, the professional learning of the household. So if you are the son of let us say, a carpenter, then you would learn carpentry and all the deep knowledge, and even how to sell things from your father, from your jati, or from your relatives, and you would then take up the business of your family. Those who were at this level of production, they would not go to higher education. But those who were Brahman, Kshatriya and Vaishya, they would go for higher education approximately after the age of 10. So in ancient India there was nothing called primary school, or what is even called the middle level school. The household was the middle level school, and then you would go to something like 8th class onwards, the middle level onwards up to college, and there you would go and take higher education. But women were married very early. They were married soon after they became Rajaswala, or they menstruated. So around the age of 14 or 15 or 16 maximum, an average girl would get married. Why it was so, whether it was good or bad, I'll not go into that. I have elsewhere talked about it in detail, why it was necessary for pre-technological societies to marry women early, largely because they had to produce a large number of children, 10 or 12 at an average. But education of women, as is very, very clear from Kamsutra, would continue after marriage. Now, I hardly need to say that for the working class people, there would not be education of the same type. There would be education of the profession into which you are married. But for the well-to-do women, or women of the leisured class, there was certainly education, and Kama Shastra proverbially describes 64 arts that women should make themselves adept in. Now, these 64 arts is a very long list. I will just indicate a few. You see, some of them are what we can say as complicated, accomplished art, or what is called in modern Indian languages as the Lalita Kala, or fine arts. And then other than fine arts, there were decorative arts. So among the fine arts, there was dance, music, calligraphy, there was philosophy, learning about different philosophical systems. There was the capacity to argue, the capacity to reason, the ability to write poetry, the ability to write poetry in which you could possibly show your skill in what was called Ashu Kavita, or instant poetry. That if you were asked to say compose something at a given moment, then you could produce 4 lines or 10 lines right there and then. So these are very highly accomplished arts. They cannot be done without years and years of training. And of course this includes playing musical instruments and veena, etc. Then there are what may be called decorative arts, like making the bed or making curtains, or how to make beautiful, colorful dresses, various kinds of costumes, how to make artifacts out of thread, sutra krida, takshanam, that is how to carve out beautiful things. Then there was great emphasis on decoration with flowers, decoration of garlands, different kinds of garlands, different kinds of decorations in the hair, hairdos, and then they have a whole list of accomplishment in makeup and how to make yourself more beautiful and things like that. You see, these are things which make the house beautiful, decorative, which make your personality beautiful, and then it includes things like Ayurveda, it includes things like Vriksha Ayurveda Yoga, that is how to grow trees, how to plant trees, how to propagate beautiful flowers, etc. So there is this long list of 64 arts. In some Puranas, they have increased and expanded this list even more. Now, what matters is very simple. In a few lines, what is to be said is that a woman is not going to be just doing cooking and cleaning in the home. She is going to make a home a real home. She is going to make a home beautiful, and all the possible methods of making a home beautiful, a living place beautiful, which would include very sophisticated arts like poetry, dance and music. They are part of this tradition, and they are part of these 64 kalas. This is not something which he has just written, or which was something which I would say was there just to glorify the lives of women, but this was an actual practice. Because when you read a large number of texts and you find so many characters, women characters in them, in so many stories, not just the epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata, but in various other stories, even stories written by poets like Dashkumar Charit of Dandi, etc. You find a huge number of women who knew all these arts and who were really accomplished in these arts. So I would say that education of women was a very important thing. Certainly, it had a very different purpose. It was not sharing the economics in the same manner. That's a different issue regarding how much the wealth she controlled in the house, and what was the status of the woman economically. For that, one would have to go to Artha Shastra. But the Kama Shastra makes it clear that she has a very specific. Then he says that there are certain arts which are specialized in the which have been cultivated in the Panchal region. This place, Uttar Pradesh, Bareilly, etc., Panchal, from where we had Draupadi. And he says that these are very specific arts, and the women of that area, they know it the best. So you can see that Kama Shastra is talking about real things. It's talking about observations based upon various kinds of surveys and various kinds of observations made by looking at the whole span of India. And he says that the best arts are cultivated by the courtesans, and when the courtesans acquire these arts and they become highly adept, then they earn the title of Ganika. And Ganika is somebody who is greatly honored by the royalty, by the Brahmins, by the kings, and by society in general. So he says, Pujita sa sadaragya gunvadbhishcha samstuta prarthaniya abhigamya cha lakshabhuta cha jayate. So Ganika acquires a very, very special status in society. Then another observation, an acute observation, which the author of Kama Shastra makes, he says that learning the arts for women is very good, because in times of in hard times, or at times when you are struck with misfortune, you are alone, or you have lost your money, or you don't have relatives to support you, a woman, if she knows the arts, then she can survive independently and she can live comfortably. Sukhenaiva jivati tatha pati viyogam cha vyasanam darunam gata. If her husband is dead, she has no man to support her. If she has fallen to some misfortune, if she has had to leave her home and go to another region far away from home, then vidyabhi sa sukhenaiva jivati. So if she has these qualities, if she has these arts, and if she has these kalas, then kalanam grahanadeva saubhagyam upajayate. So the arts are all the time giving you good fortune. So this was the Vidya Samuddesha, and that brings me to a very important section now, which is how the Nagara, or the ideal male would be like in